I understand this is a controversial subject in our context today. I understand all of the, that this is very politically incorrect what I'm saying right here now. But we need to take, I'm speaking for myself, obviously.
Absolutely.
But
I don't think if you humbly, excuse me, if you, I don't think that no one is going to deny the historical facts. There were battles. There were people who lost their lives. There's no doubt about that. That is historical, that's concrete proof. I think the difference is spreading Islam and enforcing Islam and stifling other than Islam. Very important words. A police officer, he pulls you over. He says, you ran a stoplight, a red light. I don't think red lights make any sense. As long as I pay attention, I drive, I take my caution, let me run as many lights as I want. The job of the police officer is not to force your conviction. The job of the police officer is not to make you believe and understand. His job is to uphold, enforce, and to suppress chaos. And I think that was done through the sword, the spear, the bow, the arrow, the halberd, the polearm, etc. But faith was never forced into a human being's heart through violence. That's impossible. And the biggest proof of this is the heretics, the munafiqeen, those who started the sects and groups in Islam to destroy Islam from within. And from the greatest Islamic conquests, we all know it too. Iraq and modern-day Iran, Persia, starting with Qadisiyah. How many people came from those conquests who had the utmost malice and malevolence and evil hatred and venom for Islam? But they did not have the physical ability to fight the Muslims. They were unstoppable, like a locomotive. They couldn't be stopped physically. So they began to make theological attacks on Islam because they did not believe from day one with the sword and with the spear. But they were physically suppressed. And you must outwardly submit to Islam through the kitab or through the sword. I think that is very important for us to say. Wallahu alam.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all. It's never interesting when everybody agrees on the same point. There's nothing interesting about that. I myself would go to sleep. It's always nice to hear different views. What you've seen here tonight, Muhammad al-Shinawi, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, give you long life and put barakah in your life. Was Islam spread by the sword? Come on, Sheikh. Faddal. Please. Give us a response, please.
I think I'm definitely for taking the understanding of the listener into consideration. When a person, for me, whenever a person asks Islam spread by the sword, they mean, was Islam stuffed down people's throats under the rest of the sword? That's what they mean. Was the spread of Islam permitted under the protection of the sword? Absolutely. That's undisputed history. But you have to address the people to the degree of their understanding, right? What are they asking about? Is there freedom of religion? That was the one thing going through my head. No one who asks for freedom of religion that I know of is asking, will God accept another religion? Even though that is big nowadays. I'm imagining it's there. He's asking, does your religion tell you you have to stuff it down everybody's throat? No, I'm good. It's a long night. We got a long day tomorrow. So I believe that's just crucial to understand that you could be locking up somebody's ears and he's not going to hear out your excellent arguments.
Yeah, look, there's a context. If you're in a personal conversation with someone, yes. Okay, but what are you going to say on a stage to people who are watching and listening, who are coming from all kinds of backgrounds, right? So what do you say to such a, in such a context? That's the question, right? So I'm just worried that we're avoiding the moral kernel, like the moral core of the question, just so that we can give a response and be politically correct. I think that's dangerous because eventually chickens are going to come home to roost. And we're seeing that. We're seeing a lot of young Muslims who have been hearing these answers for 10, 20 years. And now there's the internet. Now you have these quote-unquote ex-Muslims who are militant and aggressive, and they're going on Muslim forums online and trying to confuse people and trying to give them, they cite certain hadith and they cite certain narrations, and their mission is to confuse Muslims and get them away from deen. So what is our response to this? So how are we going to defend against this? We can't keep giving the same answers. That's my perspective, at least, and I hope I didn't offend anyone.
I think that, we have to always revert back to, the time of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and how he dealt with individuals in situations specific to their situation. Like, for instance, when people always ask me that question, or I come across that question, I think about the time how the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ dealt with Umar radiallahu anhu. He was going to meet the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ with his sword around his neck, right? And some of the muhaddithin and the people that explain these historical situations, they talk about it as if it was a suicide mission. And even when he came in the presence of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ could have reacted, and the ashab could have reacted in a manner to defend the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and all of the people that were in the presence. But it was an opportunity to give da'wah and to spread Islam. And so although the youth in me, in my background, it pushes me towards the direction of aggression. Somebody says something wrong to me, somebody bumps me, somebody says something about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, who I love and I'm passionate about. I know that they're saying it 9 times out of 10 out of ignorance. And I know that there's very few conflicts that I'm going to come across in my life that's going to warrant me committing bodily harm on somebody as it pertains to my Islam, right? And so we have to really begin to understand that, our opportunities to give da'wah are very few based upon what you mentioned earlier, the media and the internet and things of that nature. And we have to seize every opportunity to give people an understanding and a representation of Islam that brings them into the fold of Islam, or brings them closer to an understanding of Islam that will broaden their understanding about their existence, period.
Okay. Did anyone in the audience have any questions you wanted to ask or pose to the panelists? Any questions? Yes, brother. Can we get him a mic?
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for the educational talk. The question I have is, in light of what was said about Sharia and comparison to the United States Constitution, what do we say to someone who says that the two are not compatible with each other? When we define Sharia as a lifestyle or a set of do's and don'ts, and someone says that this lifestyle is not what America is all about, or these do's and don'ts are not in line with US Constitution. An example, I think the concept of liberalism was brought up. So if someone says that America is about liberalism, and Islam doesn't allow for liberalism, so therefore Sharia doesn't have a place in America. So how do you respond to someone like that?
Okay, so everyone understood the question. The question is the Muslim lifestyle, practicing Sharia, is that even conducive for a more liberal atmosphere, a more liberal environment such as America? One could say that the Muslim lifestyle, if him practicing Islam, practicing Sharia law makes him a Muslim, then his lifestyle, which is obviously a little more conservative, in a more liberal atmosphere is not conducive. How do we respond to something like that?
I would say that the issue here is not the perceived compatibility or incompatibility between a Muslim's personal choice and the Constitution. The question is, does the Constitution provide protections for even those who disagree with it?
Absolutely.
I have the freedom of speech under the U.S. Constitution to say that the U.S. Constitution is bogus. And that is protected speech. I don't believe that, but that's protected speech. And so while I don't agree with a certain precept, or I feel that it was immoral or wrong, right, then I'm still afforded that protection under the law. The problem is that as many Muslims have equated their personal cultures to what is definitively Islamic, many Americans have equated their personal cultures to what is definitively American.
Absolutely.
But we know that there is no universal acceptance of the ultimate morality or correctness of what is in the Constitution or is practiced in the United States as culture because of the ever-changing nature of that. If there was, then we would have no 13th Amendment.
Right.
Okay? And unfortunately, many people don't, okay, the 13th Amendment abolished private slavery in the United States. Did not abolish public slavery, also known as the prison system. Okay? So that is something that I find to be personally and morally objectionable, is for there even to be a public prison system that's taken. But while I disagree with that, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have somehow forfeited my protections under the Constitution. So I think that it's always important to understand the assumptions that someone is making when they ask these questions. They're asking because there is a myth of white Anglo-Saxon Protestant American culture, and which is definitely not true since the inception of the United States, and it certainly is not true until today. So no one can necessarily be more American than others, because that's a very undeterminable concept to begin with.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions from the crowd? The brother in the back had his hand up first. Alaikum salam.
Assalamualaikum everyone. Since we are talking about Sharia, and there are so many Islamic countries that follow Sharia law, period. They follow somewhere, there are so many democratic countries which are, like for example, Morocco and stuff, even though they are Islamic state, they have Sharia rules somewhere in their civic societies. And and now, just be realistic, this ISIS, this absurd terrorist organization, which also says they follow Sharia. So who exactly is following Sharia and who is following more Sharia versus less Sharia? So my point is, since we are talking about Sharia, just talk about Sharia. Who is following a bigger Sharia and who is following a lesser Sharia? Yes, there's a capital punishment, which we call Sharia, and which United States oblige with. And then this terrorist organizations also do the same thing, which nobody agrees with it. So what's going on over here? Thank you.
What's going on? He's asking who's actually following Sharia. You have groups like ISIL, who claims that they are an Islamic state and that what they are doing is actually governed by what we know as Sharia law. And then you have Muslim countries who pose to be Muslim countries, but when you look at the details of their governing system, it doesn't actually look like Sharia law. So who's actually practicing Sharia law? Before I pass the question over to one of the panelists, I would say to be very careful as it relates to Muslim countries and who's actually practicing Sharia law and who's not practicing Sharia law. These are obviously our personal views of world events and world views that we have that are based upon our limited understanding of Islam and our study and research of Islam. These are not consensus-based responses that we are giving. All right, so no one should leave here thinking that because all of the panelists united on a particular view that is actually haqq, because that is not the way that it goes. Al-haqq yu'raf bil-haqq wa laysa bil-rijal. Truth is known by truth and not necessarily by personalities that claim to back it. So before we get in, we're not into country bashing or this one is following Sharia and that one is not following Sharia. So I think the more important question here would probably be, is ISIS following Sharia? Is what they're doing of beheading, of pillage, and everything that we see going on the news, after you sift through all of the news to find out what is actually truth, Is this actually Sharia? Is this Islam? Muhammad?
Sorry, Bismillah. I think the best way of answering this question, Wallahu alam, is a famous Arab or Arabic proverb, a line of poetry that states, وَكُلٌّ يَدَّعِي وَصْلًا بِلَيْلَى وَلَيْلَى لَا تُقِرُّ لَهُمْ بِذَاكَ. Everybody claims to be attached to this woman named Layla. Every man is say, I know Layla, I was with Layla. Me and Layla, we're friends, we're this and we're that. I love her, she loves me, whatever the case may be. Everybody says we're with Layla. And Layla acknowledges none of them.
No disrespect to anybody named Layla here.
Layla acknowledges none of them. I would say the modern or urban interpretation of this is something that Sheikh Ahmed Kindil, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, mentioned about me being from West Philadelphia. In West Philadelphia, I'm not a tough guy. I never was. I'm a simple person. However, in West Philadelphia, is a famous cliche that we say that I feel is parallel with this line in Arabic. It said, everyone who carries a gun isn't a gangster. Everyone who wears a gun, who slings a gun, is not a gangster. Everyone who claims something, who says something, I'm this and I'm that, you're this and you're that. We know them, we're connected, we are practicing upholding, and everyone else is fake and phony and counterfeit. That does not mean that they are true in what they say. Just because I say I'm tough and I'm a gangster does not mean that. Just because I say I know Layla, I'm attributed to Layla, does not mean that she feels and believes the same. So saying that I follow the Shari'ah, I'm implementing the Shari'ah, I'm enforcing the Shari'ah, I'm establishing an Islamic state, whatever and whoever, the proof is in the pudding. Allah clearly tells us, if you differ on anything, Aqidah, Shari'ah, anything that you differ over, take it back to Allah and His Messenger. If you truly believe in Allah and in the last day. Because that's better in the beginning and in the end. If you're a Muslim, if you're a mu'min, whatever you differ over, take it back to Allah and His Messenger. So these people and these groups, and me personally, I totally dislike and abhor to use these terminologies and these names and these titles and these tags. Terrorism, terrorists, this group, that group. I don't deal with that. I'm not into that at all. What's on the news, the newspaper, these people, I am not into that. Whoever it is in this country, the Far East, the Middle East, North Africa, South Africa, wherever, anyone who makes a claim, who makes a statement, who says something, he has to back it up with the proof based off of the Kitab and of the Sunnah and the Ijma', what the Muslims unanimously agree upon. So therefore, look at the content of what these people are doing and what they're saying, whoever they are, in the Middle East or not. This act, whether it is beheading someone, whether it is selling someone as a sex slave, whatever it is, what does Allah say about it? What does the Rasul say about it? Have the Muslims unanimously agreed upon it being permissible or impermissible? If you find the answer in one of those three sources, then that's one thing. If you find something on the contrary in one of those three sources, that's another thing. So every Muslim, one way or another, one extent to another, is going to follow the Sharia. It's subjective, it's relative, one way or another. But I'm making a broad claim. I have to prove my claim. I have to substantiate my claim. And it's only three things that can do that. Qala Allah, Qala Rasul, what the Muslims unanimously agreed upon. So that's my opinion on this. And that's with regards to any country, any individual, any Dawah group, any political group, whatever they claim we're doing, we have done, we're promoting, it has to be backed by one of those three sources. And if it isn't, then talk is cheap. That's my humble opinion. Wallahu ta'ala alam.
Well, we have to stop. Jazakumullahu khairan. We can continue the discussion off the stage, but as officially we are done here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you all for your husnul istima', for your good listening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward our panelists for everything that they have put forward in terms of their responses and the knowledge that they shared with us. We pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala places it in their scales of hasanat on the day when they will need it the most. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وآخر دعوانا عن الحمد لله رب